Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review. Continuing on with the X-Men uh 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 reviews. Now going into X-Men First Class, the kind of soft rebooted era, short-term soft rebooted era of the X-Men. But this one is held as one of the better X-Men films, and I tend to concur. But I argue, like, Logan, definitely a very great X-Men film, but it's more of like a Wolverine film. In my opinion, I think a lot of people would agree that Days of Future Past, which will be the next one I'll be reviewing, is by far, at least until we'll see what the MCU will and Kevin Feige was gonna do, by far is the best X-Men movie that we've seen. High quality, top tier. Like there'll be some minor quibbles, like more of the comic accurate costumes. We have yet to actually get that. We get fairly close in this one with the yellow and blue costumes in First Class, kind of an homage to, because it's kind of supposed to be based off how like the X-Men look when like the first big giant X-Men story, kind of reminiscent of that, which will be the first, X-Men team up, like a solid X-Men team up comic that I'll start with, because there'll be other X-Men iconic stories that I'll be following through. Because I just wrapped up my Magneto solo comic book story, which is up on my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/talkativecarl. Also, by the way, follow me in the links in the description below. My Twitter, Patreon, Twitch, as I'm going live almost every day. But I also want to let you guys know that I'll be starting playing some Guilty Gear Strive after the whole situation with like Evo a little over a week ago, because I dipped my toe into Guilty Gear XR a few years back, but I didn't like maintain that along the way, and I'm like, okay, I gotta check out, like I really want to, because like I love it. I did dig the animation, and like the characters look pretty dope, but I only know like crap, Soul Bad Guy by name, and Jack O or Jackie O. But it's probably like the only two that I know by name. So yeah, look forward to that, because I'm gonna be wrapping up FF16 fairly soon, and I got a cool surprise for all those who've been watching my COD videos. But before we get into all that, yeah, I'll be wrapping up. My next X-Men comic book review will be a mini, Quicksilver mini series, and then after that, the last solo X-Men character we'll be tackling is Scarlet Witch. And I think that miniseries should be either wrapped up or wrapping up. So by the time I'm done with the Quicksilver one, I'll do that, and then I'll do like a tier list of all the solo comics that I've been reading and organize it and let you know which one was like, the one that I read so far has been solid. And then I'll get into the actual team comics, and then come back again and reorganize all the X-Men comics, team comics that I read. Oh, and I already did do like a YouTube tier listing ranking of the X-Men films. It should be already up on my YouTube channel, so you can look up that. Anyway, X-Men First Class, which introduced us to a lot, like at least a fair amount of new actors. James McAvoy playing as a young Charles Xavier, but the first time I was introduced to James McAvoy was in Wanted. This is the second time I've seen him in stuff that, really like put him on like in the spotlight as one of my favorite actors. Of course, like that really cemented after his role in Split in Glass, which I don't care what anybody says. I enjoy Glass as like a good wrap up with the trilogy of the Unbreakable movie franchise. Michael Fassbender, who is the first. This is the first time I actually seen Michael Fassbender in anything. Apparently, he was in Inglourious Basterds, and that's why he got recruited in this. Never seen Inglourious Basterds. I know it's supposed to be like a great Tarantino film. I, never had any kind of interest in going and seeing it. Rose Byrne as Moira McTaggart. Jennifer Lawrence as Raven Darkholme, aka Mystique. January Jones as Emma Frost. And I thought that was like a fake ass name, because I thought that was like because January Jones sounds like a porn name, doesn't it? Like one of those like pinup, girls back in the 70s, or like one of the Playboy bunnies back in the 70s. January Jones sounds like either a Playboy bunny in the 70s or one of those old school Bond villains or female Bond girls. That's because her name sounds like that. Nicholas Hoult was the first time I've seen Nicholas Hoult in anything. Will be in this as a young Hank McCoy, aka Beast. And got Oliver Platt playing just Man in Black suit, which sucks. I mean, like, dude, because I've seen he's a great character actor. I've seen him and stuff. I think the first time I've seen Oliver Platt in anything was one of those old sci-fi movie called Species. And I think that was the first time in my young age when I was watching old films. It was the first time I'd seen him in anything. Jason Fleming as Azazel. Lucas Till as Alex Summers, aka Havoc, Cyclops' brother. Eddie Gathig as Armando Munez, aka Darwin. Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw, or Dr. Klaus Schmidt. Khalid Landry Jones as Cassidy, aka Banshee. Zoe Kravitz as Angel Salvador. Alex Gonzalez as Juanos Quested, aka Riptide. Okay, yeah. So the way the movie opens is very clever, and I thought it was a good way to open it because it really ties in, runs very parallel to what we saw from the first X-Men movie, where, and this kind of pairs very well with my Magneto comic that I just finished reviewing, which I highly suggest you guys check out whenever you get the chance. X-Men Magneto Testament, where you see like how Magneto's life was in one of those concentration camps. People forget that Eric is a Jewish man. Sometimes they forget. I think the movie does help really reinforce that, like, yeah, he's a Jewish man, even though as I went over his bit of his stats, he pretty much like, lost faith in a way, after the whole, situation he lived in. And so Sebastian Shaw was not like a true Nazi believer. He just, joined up in their, I guess, science division or something like that, because he just wanted, like Mr. Sinister, just wanted to poke and prod and everything like that. But he's also a mutant. Sebastian Shaw, in case I think they did a very good job at utilizing how Sebastian Shaw's powers work, because you had a little bit of it in the 90s X-Men show, but his power is pretty much absorbing kinetic energy. Very different from how Bishop would absorb all other forms of, because he can't really absorb like kinetic energy. I don't think it's one of the energies he can't absorb, and he also probably can't absorb magic. But Sebastian Shaw absorbs kinetic energy, usually like physical, or like just yeah. Let me like don't want to butcher this, because there's a couple of characters I want to like nail down their powers, how they work. Yeah, energy absorption. Sebastian has the superhuman ability to absorb kinetic energy and metabolize it to enhance his own physical strength, speed, and stamina. This makes him extremely difficult to defeat in battle, as every blow struck against him only makes him stronger. Unusual tactics are required to defeat him, usually by incapacitating him or by attacking him psionically. Shaw absorbs the energy of any blow he is struck by, not just punches, but also projectiles like bullets, and to a less successful degree, electricity, physical base energy beams. Without absorbing energy, Shaw is merely as strong, or is just as a strong ordinary human, though normally he works to keep his strength at superhuman level. Shaw reportedly spends time hitting a wall after waking in order to build up his power reserves. It is revealed in his encounter with Hercules and Madison Jeffries that his power of energy absorption is not limited to kinetic energy. Shaw himself stated he has stated was a common misconception, that he can absorb any form of energy, electrical, magical, etc., to fuel his powers. According to Shaw, kinetic energy just works the best. Oh, so that's why I want to read this up, because I could have been wrong, because he could absorb, a decent amount. So absorbing energy enhances his metabolism, durability, strength, speed, stamina, and it has a healing factor. He got hit in the nose by Colossus and healed in an hour. But it can't heal catastrophic injuries like a blasted head or a broken neck. Secondary mutation. Shaw underwent the Mother Vine enhancement process, giving him a secondary mutation, one that enables him to capitalize on his already impressive abilities. Ambient energy conversion. Magneto describes the Black King's secondary mutation as the absorption of ambient kinetic energy around him into himself, eliminating the need to build his own kinetic stores by requisite physical activity. his weaknesses. Shaw's abilities can be overloaded by too great an influx of power, like being hit with too many superhumanly strong punches. Shaw can also be defeated if an opponent focuses on simply immobilizing him without striking him with significant force, or if something heavy falls on him. For though he can sap the kinetic falling energy, the weight of the object could still crush him unless he is strong enough to lift or stop it. Rogue One's defeated Shaw simply by picking him up and throwing him straight up into the atmosphere, effectively removing him from the battlefield. There is an upper limit to the amount of energy that Shaw can absorb and convert once he was overloaded by electrical energy discharge from the X-Men storm and fell into a temporary coma. Okay. Okay, sorry, I went on a tangent here because I, need to make sure like I got that correctly. Anyway, Kevin Bacon is great in this, honestly. I love Kevin Bacon in a lot of stuff. I mean, like, do yourself a huge favor and just cycle through like a decent amount of Kevin Bacon films. Because honestly, I want to review Footloose at some point. It's on a docket. After I'm done with all the X-Men movies, I want to get back to regular scheduled movie programming reviews. And I really want to review Footloose. I think I want to review Tremors next year. But Footloose and Hollow Man, and I want to review that for Halloween though. But yeah, like those probably like my easily like our favorite Kevin Bacon films because he is phenomenal. He also makes a great bad guy, because he just oozes charm, but he also can like turn up the sinister, no pun intended. And it's like nice change of pace because kudos to the director here, Matthew Vaughn, who because there's a deep wellspring of untapped X-Men rogues that you can pull from that doesn't have to do with Magneto all the time. Or any thing can do with Wolverine. Because you got Mr. Sinister, which they kept on teasing every once in a while with name of corporations like Access or Essex corporation or whatever. And it's like, and then if you recall, in the last season of the 90s X-Men show, I pointed out in one of the episodes where we understand Mr. Sinister's origins. They're tied to, ironically, Charles Darwin, where we got a character here named Darwin with a mutant ability to adapt to anything. And Sinister has a specific relationship, well, I guess depending on how you can, a writer can fix it, but I think it was very clever that he's so deeply tied to Charles Xavier, given the fact that he knew his let's say his great grandfather, I think. And because he's messing around with mutant genetics, turned himself into, or at least forced his mutant gene to, he just messed with his genetics and forced mutations on himself. to turn himself into Mr. Sinister that we know. It was just, he's a great character. You can do a decent with the Juggernaut, but in Deadpool 2 kind of handled the Juggernaut fairly well. And don't get me started, because the Juggernaut is Charles' stepbrother, and even though they remember it in Deadpool 2 and acknowledged it, you don't get it in here. And I get it. It's like, you know, Deadpool 2 came out way after this, but just we'll get into it in a minute. But yeah, this is like a decent wellspring. I just reviewed like Marvel Anime X-Men, where they mainly dealt with Mastermind and U-Men or UFOs, who just, you know, weird mad scientists that harvest mutant organs to, you know, try to artificially make mutant powers or something like that. I mean, like, there's a, you know, decent amount of villains that you can really do something with. And then completely left Magneto out of it. It's like, you know, you hear the name, don't need to address it, he's not part of the story. And it's like, it'll be just refreshing that, yeah, Magneto, we will deal with Magneto here and there, but every once in a while, he's not part of this. He's not the main concern. He's not even there's no team ups or where he will just screw you at the end or anything like that. No, just like with, you know, any good story where you're dealing with like Batman or Superman, they don't have to deal with Joker and Lex Luthor all the time. There's other people. Anyway, so when Shaw sees Eric pulls that gate with his manifesting powers, which at this point in time, not many people were aware that mutants are a thing. They're like random phenomenon, because in my review of Apocalypse in his origin story, which by the way, check that out as well, because he was one of the first at least recorded mutants in history that manifested, you know, for the world to see. I say only recorded because I imagine prior to Apocalypse's birth, there's, you know, had to be like, you know, pop-ups, blips here and there before he even came in the picture. He just was like the, you know, the one that really kind of hit it home. I was like, because they addressed it in most cases in the Eternals comics and what have you. I want to bring it up here because I touched on it in the Apocalypse, my Apocalypse comic review. You know about the Eternals and, you know, how they came to be and stuff if you watch the MCU movie, but they're created by the Celestials, with these, you know, kind of, you know, godlike figures. They, you know, created the Eternals and the Deviants, but they also mucked with early, you know, humanity when we were just like cave people at that time, and they mucked with most of those people's DNA, which, you know, they, you know, run experiments essentially and trying to see what would, you know, spring from it, like, you know, down the line. So because I kind of wish they kind of bring it up like publicly, like in the comics, have like the Eternals bring up in a news conference like, oh yeah, like your mutants and X-Men, yeah, that's our God's fault, you know. Yeah, early humanity, they kind of muck with their DNA, some of y'all DNA, and, you know, many generations later out pop mutants, and you know, yeah, that's on us, people. Yeah, I kind of wish they kind of bring that up, because it's like, yeah, the Celestials are responsible for what we know to be mutants today. Anyway, it's just because, you know, Namor and Apocalypse being like the first two to be recorded, but Apocalypse in Egypt, then during the 40s, we know Namor to be another one. That's when human history actually started keeping records. But prior to that, I imagine there's like other situations where people assume these are demigods or whatever, where they could just been more than likely mutants. But anyway, Sebastian Shaw brings Eric to his office and asks him to move his coin. And this is kind of like gonna be like a big symbolism throughout the entire film. He asked him to move his coin, but Eric could not move it. So he has his mother Eric's mother dragged into the office and threatens, "I will shoot her if you don't move this coin." He can't move it. He shoots her. Eric wigs out, all the metal in the room, and it is a nice slow shot because you don't see it at first, but until Eric starts freaking out, you see his little laboratory where he kind of experiments on people. All the metal starts flying around everywhere. The two soldiers that brought the woman in, the helmets they're wearing, it crushes their skulls and everything like that. So feeling all kinds of pride, he gifts Eric the coin, and I was like, "Oh, I'm very proud of you, Eric. We're going to do great things together." And of course then transition to the future, released in the 60s, where a now young adult Eric Langshire, years after the war, is making a hit list, essentially, tracking out all the people involved just to get to Shaw. They seek his revenge for not only the atrocities that befell him and his but also his family. And a nice little foreshadowing what he's gonna do to Shaw when he still has that same coin that was given to him, and he's moving around with his powers, and he flicks it to the picture of Shaw right between the eyes. So, and this is kind of like, because after X-Men Origins Wolverine was announced, Fox had this kind of like a slate of ideas of like solo X-Men projects, and the next one was supposed to be X-Men Origins Magneto, which got scrapped because how X-Men Wolverine tanked so hard. So there was a little script was being like written out and just tossed in the trash. But I imagine they used some of the ideas that they had so far and just kind of incorporated that into the X-Men First Class. Because like the scenes where like Michael Fassbender Magneto, just like the effects in here are phenomenal, and the use where he is going to after he interrogates and tortures, because he's going after former Nazi members that are connected to Shaw, and he pulls a metal filling out of one of the guy's mouths after he says like, the two other people who know where Shaw might be live in like Argentina, which there were a few Germans that after the war fled to South America. So there's some kind of historical fact to that. And the cool effects where he takes a knife to one guy, put it in his hand, and another guy, a bartender, is about to shoot Eric, but he of course manipulates him because he's holding a gun to shoot at another guy. He pulls out the knife out of one guy's the guy's hand, flings it at the gunman, and manipulates the knife right back into his hand and stabs the guy. And that entire sequence, phenomenal. No notes. That was really, really, really good. Great use of effects. And like the best kind is just you cannot tell, or you're so invested it doesn't even freaking matter. So he then finds out where Shaw is gonna be. He owns like a boat and everything like that. While this is going on, because it kind of runs parallel to what we see what Xavier is going through, because these two guys' upbringings, are so far different from each other. Because if it was flip-flop, I imagine they'll have a different outlook on life. Because Magneto and Xavier are based off of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. And you see Xavier as a kid during the time when Eric was a kid. He's waking up, he's in Westchester, and he sees his mother in the kitchen, and he's like, "You're not my mother. My mother never made me anything in the kitchen. She usually have the servants do it. So who are you?" So the kid's quick. And of course, it's just like a orphan Raven Darkholme. And it's fine, but we know that you're, X-Men enthusiast. Xavier lived with Cain Marko, who we know to be the Juggernaut in the future. And he was like a massive bully at the time. And you kind of like nixing all that, where it could have added to Xavier. It's like, imagine like, I guess you could, maybe it's too, there'll be like too much on one plate, but you can, because Xavier just like, unilaterally just say like, "Oh, you can live here." And it's like, yeah, he got a good heart, but it's like, dude, your mother cares that very little, because like, he adores his mother in many kind of stories. And it's like, in some cases, like in I believe it was the 90s X-Men cartoon, where it's like his mother passed away at a young age, probably around the time when he would have been going to college or something like that. But she should have been, they went with one direction where she is like, not an attentive mother. And I guess, does it extend to the point where she just didn't notice that there's an extra person in the house? Sure, Raven can disguise herself as like, one of the servants or somebody, but in case, one servant is somewhere else or something like that, they can, at somewhere down the line, that can easily, go pear-shaped, where like one servant's out doing grocery shopping, but the mother sees her and it's like, didn't you just leave? Like, 10 minutes ago? How can you be back so fast? Oh, like, don't worry about it. I guess you can say, Xavier can use his power and like kind of made her kind of forget. I guess you can work your way around that. But it would have added to like Xavier's like the layers to Xavier, where it's like he gets constantly picked on by this stepbrother, but Raven always comes in to step up, stand up for him, to avoid getting the worst of worst. But still, Xavier still has compassion, where it's like, this is my brother and I love him. Sure, we have our differences, but and I lose hope that one day we'll come together, kind of thing. That probably would have added something to like Xavier's core of his beliefs, where despite somebody who, like Kane, who at this point in time won't know he is a mutant, but just doesn't like him because in many cases, his father who married Xavier's mom, took more interest in Xavier than his own son. And that bitterness, kind of, had to go somewhere, and he kind of took it out on Xavier. And just like his outlook on mutant and human relations kind of like stems from how, yeah, my brother hated me for no apparent reason, but we can one day, my dream is the whole day I'm not going to stop extending that olive branch kind of situation. That could have meant something. Of course, Kane Markle, if you see it, like, because they try to tangentially kind of tie all these things together. Like you see later, Mystique goes along with Magneto, trying to kind of tie into the first 3 X-Men films, but then it's like, okay, when she sabotages Cerebro in the first movie, she wouldn't have done that given the fact that she was raised as like a sister in his house, that he took her in and everything like that. She wouldn't be so quick to sabotage and put him in a coma. That wouldn't have like, made too much sense. But anyway, I think that would have added, some layers to Xavier, like his unwavering sense of like unity, the dream. But so fast forward years later, he's like, using his powers to kind of hit on girls and get laid. It's kind of fun to see Xavier kind of like, no pun intended, let his hair down and just, like chug beer and everything like that. It's like he was, you forget, like he was young too, and he would have enjoyed parties and, like, live it up a bit. But Raven, just, she feeling insecure at the fact that she can be who she is and fully enjoy herself the way Xavier could, because she is essentially hiding who she is, while Xavier doesn't really have to, because his powers ain't so pronounced. Because Mystique, more often than not, is obvious. Someone like Nightcrawler, very obvious he's a mutant. Someone like Marrow, her powers fairly obvious. Or in some cases, in like technically Cyclops, his stuff fairly obvious because he has to wear those red shades all the time, in order to be able to, see stuff without blasting lasers at everybody. And she, you kind of like hint where she has some kind of like, she asked like, Xavier one night, like, would you date me? Like, I mean, like with, if I look the way I do. And Xavier, I say, like, I don't want to dump on Xavier. I think plenty enough people always dump on Xavier. Some unnecessarily, some necessary. But it's just that he's like focused on like the bigger picture. He kind of, overlooks the finer details and stuff that's right in front of him that he probably should be paying attention to. Like Raven, like how Raven feels, because you probably should have spent a lot more time just, sit down, talking with her and addressing, how she's feeling right now, because considering that, yeah, like I can't be myself. I want to be able to, date and go out in public looking the way I choose to look, looking the way I am, and not, you know, a disguise every time I'm walking out of the house. And honestly, maybe not in the 60s, 70s, and maybe not the 80s, partially in the 90s, but honestly, a lot of people would definitely date a blue skin Mystique because he's still freaking hot. And given the fact that how many anime waifus out there in the world looking like demons and all manner of whatever, yeah, we will date you. I have no freaking problem, you know, dating like a hot blue chick. You know, honestly, it's like, duh, yeah. But Xavier doesn't see her like that. He sees her as like a sister. That's how they probably grew up together. But Moira McTaggart, who is normally a scientist, but here she's like a CIA agent, and she's following leads, you know, about like some dealings going on with the Hellfire Club, which is actual like a club, but not just a name of a villain group. And she sees a general walk inside, somebody that she recognized, and she sneaks in and she sees him talking with Sebastian Shaw, and because Sebastian Shaw's plan is to start the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he's trying to convince, you know, somebody from both parties to kind of push the, grease the wheels to get that happen. And you see, like, character Riptide utilize his kind of like mini tornado powers or tempest kind of powers on him, and you see Emma Frost, played by January Jones, who did definitely a better job than what we see from that weird cameo in X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I guess we kind of like gloss over that entirely and just start fresh with this particular Emma Frost. But she's witnessed all these people's powers, and she see Exazel take him, the general back to Washington, and she's trying to warn her superiors, but it's like, oh, you must be crazy, because General's really right here. So how can he, get here that fast from that long across the way? And of course, like Azazel is, which they never really addressed, but I kind of figured they probably should have addressed the fact that, in some kind of situation, I don't know where you would fit it in, but Azazel having some kind of thing with Mystique, because like in the comics, those two got together, and she gave birth to Nightcrawler, who once again did not even address that fact or even acknowledge that fact, or chose not to acknowledge that fact in X2, given the fact that it's pretty a good wide knowledge that Nightcrawler is Mystique's son. Given his power set, he gets teleportation powers from his dad. And Azazel, looking like a demon and teleporting, get that from the dad. That's dad's side of things. But the blue skin is the mom's side of things. Kind of wish there's a lot of things kind of wish they kind of would address. It's kind of obvious. They need to like just put it out there. Anyway, so learning about mutants for the first time, this is like, because they like to use the tagline "Children of the Atom" a lot through this film, and given the fact that the atomic bomb kind of expedited X genes everywhere, things like that, kind of like in the comics during the 60s when the X-Men were created. She's looking for somebody who's an expert in genetic mutations, which in this case happens to be Professor Xavier. And as he meets up with him, he looks inside her mind, sees what she saw. It's like, oh, okay, things are really starting to spark up mutants are starting to really reveal themselves. So we need to probably, like, you know, Xavier sees this as an opportunity to, like, you know, slowly but surely reveal themselves to the world and ease humanity into this. But he's a bit naive given the fact that this is the 60s during a civil rights era where people of color isn't getting basic human rights. It's like, what freaking chance are you having, given the fact that you got like a demon looking dude and a blue chick that can change shape? Because it's like, you're a long off. I mean, like, you're just like, on shaky grounds in the 90s. You damn sure you're not getting any type of acceptance during the 60s. So they go to meet with her superiors, Xavier and Raven, and they're not believing what, and they're not buying what Xavier is selling to Xavier. Kind of dumb in my opinion. Just sure, you and Raven know you can get inside people's heads, but they cannot take that as proof that, oh, like, hey, like, I can read minds and stuff like that. But you can easily have, as they suspect, like, oh, you brought a spy here, and it's like, it's like you could have gotten that, any myriad of ways, and pretending like, oh, you can just read our thoughts. Like, no, you brought a spy in here, straight to Guantanamo Bay for you, until Mystique had to get up and change form in front of everybody to, like, buy it, to completely buy it. Then you got, Oliver Splat in the back, and it's like, you couldn't be bothered to give this man like at least a name like Cliff or something. Give him something. It's so it's a level of indecency. It's like, come on now, why hire Oliver Platt if you're not even gonna be bothered to give this guy a name? Sure, he's gonna die, but it's like, give him the decency of a name. Cliff, Bob, Jeffrey, something. But if you're not gonna be bothered to give him Oliver Platt a decent name beyond just Man in Black, I'm gonna call him Cliff. So Cliff, decides, I want to invest in this because I can see some promising stuff with mutants, helping out the government and help saving the world. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So along with Mora, they go to this secret little area that Cliff knows, and he introduces them to Hank McCoy. And stupid Xavier is like, oh, I didn't know you already have mutants on your squad. And we come to realize, oh, he didn't know. I am so sorry. And he Hank reveals to Cliff that, which you would think would be super uncomfortable. Like, I don't even know how you can stand it. Where because Beast in the comics, of course, Nicholas Hoult is a thin guy. Like, he got some muscle tone, but he's kind of like a thin guy, and he got these prehensile feet, the kind of big feet and everything like that. But it's like, it's all CGI, but it's like he got socks on and very kind of thin shoes, and it's like, how can you functionally walk in those? And him and Raven had like a little moment together and stuff like that. But it's like, in the comics, Beast is, before the blue fur, is like almost like a big gorilla kind of dude. And of course, you can't easily portray that in this kind of context without the use of CGI, without it also looking kind of dumb. But I think, I mean, I like Nicholas Hoult Beast, okay, but I think Kelsey Grammer's Beast is probably like the best looking. Honestly, it was like spot on, man. Like, and you know, say what you will about X-Ray, but there's a few things they did get right, and that is the tippy top one, because like the casting choice for Beast with Kelsey Grammer was spot on with his elegant tone of voice, that Frasier type of ecstatic that he exudes, that, you know, gravitas, the wisdom and everything like that, is like all that lines end of the acting chops, all that lines up well, along with the blue fur, spot on. And like, you know, Nicholas Hoult, you know, sorry, he eased his way into it in the latter movies, but oh man, it's just like, and Kelsey Grammer was like pitch perfect. Like, now that's how you do make Hank McCoy. Like, that's it. That's how you do it. So he ends up Cliff and Hank show off the proto cerebro in this big orb thing, and it's like, it's literally specifically designed to like locate mutants, but you need obviously a psychic to like a, you know, telepath to actually, you know, really make it work. And it's kind of very like coincidental that you just have this kind of technology for a specific purpose for a telepath to use. But they end up, like, you see like a cameo with like a young Storm and whatever, very proto. And of course you always get at least two nods, like, don't touch my hair. And that's like, get to us, yeah, we get it, like, you're gonna go bald, haha, very funny. Anyway, they use it to start like recruiting. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. They go and find out about like, oh, Sebastian Shaw, you know, they track him down on his boat at the same time as Magneto does. And of course, he's not prepared with, you know, Emma Frost being on board. She neutralizes him and tosses him off the boat. And as around the same time, the CIA comes knocking on their, you know, boat door. Riptide kind of like throws some whirlwinds at them, and, you know, Magneto tries to, like, you know, stop them while they try to escape through a submarine, but it's too big for him, and he's not at that point being that, you know, he's like a few notches away from being the Magneto that we know. He's not prepared to lift something that huge.
Phrasing.
So you see like Xavier jump in the water and calm his mind so he can like keep him from drowning. And, you know, because he got inside his head, he saw the atrocities that befell Eric, and he wants to help him. And this kind of springs, you know, like, this sprouts the friendship these two will share between each other. And you often see them playing chess, like you see in like the first three movies, or at least the first movie, where they have these kind of debates and how, like, you know, which way they go about dealing with mutants and their rights and everything like that. So they use Cerebro in order to start recruiting the first, you know, members of the X-Men. And I kind of wished it was a little bit more accurate, but it is the 60s, and they kind of gotta line it up appropriately. They trying to line it up and make sense with the original three films. So they started to recruit their version of Angel, not Warren Worthington III, but Zoe Kravitz, Angel Salvador, who was kind of like a insect powers in a way. Like, she got butterfly wings and she spits acid. In the comics, she actually used acid to eat food like a fly would. Uh, uh, and he also recruit Banshee, who has the sonic scream powers and can use it to help him fly. You got Alex Summers, aka Havoc, with kind of concussive blast that shoots out of his body. And we got who else? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. But no, I don't think so. And then you got Darwin. He's not the one I forgot, but I feel like it was like extra member, wasn't it? But no. But we got Darwin, and Darwin has some, on the surface seems like kind of like a lame power, but it's actually it's like not to be underestimated, because it's essentially make him like very powerful, because he has the power of adaptability. He has extremely malleable physiology. His powers were greatly amplified after he was exposed to massive bursts of mutant energy. The energy which got expelled from mutants on M-Day while he was fused with Vulcan. Darwin's powers of self-protection offers continuous circumstantial evolution. Darwin is able to adapt to any situation. His reactive mutation adjusts his capabilities to his environment. Examples of such manifestations include receiving functional gills after being submerged in water, gaining night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, being able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin becoming fireproof when exposed to flames, his body becoming pure energy, his intelligence increasing itself, or the understanding of the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form. However, his powers do not always take the effect he desires. For example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleports him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would allow him to defeat the Hulk. He is currently living as a code to survive the Children of the Vault. Immortality or near immortality. As a byproduct of Darwin's continuous evolution, he may in fact be immortal. He can survive indefinitely in harsh conditions and or without water or nourishment. Darwin even survived Hela's death touch. He also survived 200 years while in the Vault, a location where time moves much more quickly than time in the outside world. Proactive adaptation. After his battle with Hela, Darwin became able to trigger mutations that could proactively ensure his survival, sometimes even by affecting others around him. Death Harbinger. Although many of his death deity adaptations have gone, Darwin still claims to be a death harbinger. Darwin does appear to be able to detect when someone is dying and still carries much of the darkness of Hela with him. Abilities: highly intelligent and speaks multiple languages due to his mutation. Darwin's father is Latino, his mother is African American. Darwin is part of a love triangle with Monet and Strong Guy, both men pining after Monet in secret for some time. Strong Guy and M eventually went on a date, but it ended very poorly. Later, Darwin and Monet had a one-night stand. Just a little whatever. But yeah, Darwin's power is actually, in a way, OP. Not to the extent where he can take on the Hulk, but it just shows how freaking powerful the Hulk is. The fact that, Darwin, his power is like, okay, the best way to combat the Hulk for you to survive is just not being near him and just teleport him so far away that, you just don't engage. So uh they got their little recruitment going, but uh I mean, some people pointed out where it's like it's hard to feel anything for these recruits because it's like we don't know their motivations and stuff like that, but it's not their movie, you know, I argue. And the primary focus is primarily was, you know, like with Mystique, Xavier, Magneto, and that's a, and then to some extent Sebastian Shaw, but you know that's about what we need to focus on. But you get the little moments of seeing where like you know like the crew, you know, the origins of Magneto's helmet and where they learn to train, an idea of making like a team to combat, you know, threats against mutants or mutant threats in general. Being going from G-Men to X-Men, which where you get the name from Moira McTaggart. And of course, you see like a budding kind of potential thing between Hank and Mystique. Although Hank has been working on a cure to like, you know, you seeing like how Raven's abilities giving her like essentially making her immortal. Even when she's like 80, she'll still have like a body of like a 30-year-old or something like that. Utilizing that in order to build a serum that probably will just like disguise you, but or at least make you look normal, but you still keep your powers. But most mutant powers are your physical attributes, like your feet. And of course, it doesn't work. We know the story of Hank, where it's like he tried to take a serum to make himself look human, but it only enhanced the mutation, making him like a blue furry, guy. And of course, like Magneto sees her just as perfect and trying to pretty much seeding what Raven will be in the future, like a mutant liberator or terrorist in some people's eyes. And the relationship she has with Magneto, because he sees nothing wrong with her, he sees her as perfect and beautiful, until the next story where she took a dart for him, which carries a mutant cure temporarily, and he's like, oh my god, and then completely abandons her because she's no longer a mutant and no longer beautiful. Which, speaking of, when she's trying to hit on Magneto, which births the iconic Magneto meme where it's like, it's like, I look for the real Raven. I said the real Raven, perfection. Like the birth of the infamous meme. And of course, you get a nice little. I didn't catch it in the theater at the time. Oh no, I don't even think I even watched it in the theater. But because when I saw it, it's like I thought I recognized her when I first watched this, but it took like somebody else telling me years ago, like, oh yeah, that was the same woman that was, because the one who was Mystique in the previous 3 X-Men films, what's her name? Rebecca Romaine. Just an uncredited cameo. She came in for like a day and just to pop in, and it's like, and it's got me thinking. So she stopped deciding to look like Jennifer Lawrence and decided to just look like Rebecca Romaine in the first 3 films down the line. And she becomes less chatty in those films because she has she still talks a fair bit, as much as it's not like Deadpool or anything like that, but she talks like a normal person, like, whenever she's engaged. But in the first 3 films, she's fairly like quiet. Well, definitely in the first film, But by the second film, she talks when she needs to talk, and third film, like, you know, she talks a fair bit. Yeah, but I like that little cameo. It was very fun. Because you know, Raven just wants to be accepted. It was Magneto who's essentially is like a teacher in his own right, uh, where he's like telling her like, hey, you you stop spending half your strength trying to look like a normal person, and just embrace it, and you can reach your full potential. Even to the point where she decides to not wear clothes anymore, which, you know, is in a lot of cases part of her skin, where she just transforms into a person. She adopts the clothes. But, you know, you don't want to delve too hard into that. Anyway, while on a mission to try to get info about Sebastian Shaw, you see an awesome display of Magneto's abilities, where he's like, you know, taking soldiers and wrapping up in like razor wire and everything like that, and deflecting bullets. It was very cool while he's running and gunning. That was really awesome display of probably the best, you know, like I think Magneto has the best display of his powers throughout this entire film. It was very well done. So eventually Xavier kind of catches up with them, and they interrogate Emma Frost while she's trying to influence the Russian general to get like the Cuban Missile Crisis, you know, kickstarted. And Xavier, he's trying to strangle her in her diamond form, and it cracks, and it's like, it'll take a lot more than brass. I'm assuming it's brass metal as the bed frame. Brass wouldn't have the necessary, no matter if you're squeezing it, wouldn't have the strength needed to crack diamond. At least I don't think. I mean, I'm not a scientist or anything like that, but it takes a lot to crack diamond. There's a lot more pressure required that metal frame can possibly pull off. But whatever, it got her to like revert back to her normal state, so Xavier could read her mind. And he sees that, you know, Shaw's planning a third war, so that way mutants could possibly live through like a nuclear holocaust. But she's a psychic too, and because she's been inside his head before, and it's like she is completely on board with sure, say you can say that these henchmen are on board with, because given the fact that maybe their upbringing and being treated differently from humans cause them to be cynical and villainous, and it's like, oh well, they're just gonna bump them off with this Holocaust situation, fine, just mutants only. But she got inside his head, and it's like, you know, this guy used to be a Nazi, and it's like, you're okay with that. You would have been a little girl when WW2 was popping off, so you should not be like on board just by rights, like just by sheer morality alone. I'm just saying. So she gets locked up. I don't know how they managed to contain her, given her mutant ability to just mentally control anybody she wants to. But they built a facility to cage her. But anyway, because, you know, clearly Sebastian Shaw doesn't give a crap, you know, about her ultimately. He just, you know. But while this was going on, and all these kids are showing off their powers and what they can do, Sebastian Shaw, you know, after, you know, before January Jones left off to deal with the Russian guy, realize, oh, they got a second there too, and they're planning something. So Shaw, Riptide, and Azazel go to Cliff's little hideout that's not so secret, and very horrifically, you hear it first, but then you see it. Then it adds to the terror the fact that Azazel takes all these CIA agents, teleports them in the sky, drops them, and they all go splat, including Oliver Splat. And I'm like, dang, that's like, horrific and bogus. But not as bogus as what they'll do to Darwin, because after with the mistreatment by regular people and being treated like freaks, they they share their little sob stories. Then while taking out all these CIA agents, Shaw, Azazel, and Riptide go and try to recruit them to be on their team or just stay out of their way. And of course, Angel goes with them, given the fact that the way she's treated. It's like, oh well, I'll just join up with them because I don't want to, becoming a stripper. Because like I'd rather them look at me in that way rather than look at me like a freak or something like that. Darwin tries to pretend like he's joining up with them, but tries to stop him. But and he Havoc try to help, but given that he absorbed energy, he takes what Havoc dished out, put it in that little bit of it inside Darwin's mouth, and it ends up killing him from the inside out. And I want to address the elephant in the room here, how this is 2011 when this movie came out. It was being made, like late 2009 into 2010. And it's like, how insensitive and borderlines you can look at as pretty freaking racist, or just racially ignorant, that you not only you got two people of color in this film. One goes to the bad guy side, with one of them being like a former Nazi. Then you got the other one killed unceremoniously. I won't say unceremoniously, but just like stupidly. Given the fact that his powers should keep him alive, but I guess you can argue, well, he's been killed from the inside out. Even still, his powers is on a cellular level. No matter what happens to him, even if he, like they show, like even if he's submerged underwater, he'll just naturally learn how to breathe underwater with gills. So even if some kind of energy thing is trying to, kill him, he should adapt to the point where he turns to living energy and just absorb it. Something like that. But no, he just gets killed off, which sucks. Because, like, why would you do that? And that's what people remember the most out of the entire film. At least it's in, like, the top 5 most remembered moments in X-Men First Class. The fact that you killed off the one black guy on your team. And it's like, nobody in the writer's room raised their hand and said, like, hey, is this racially insensitive? When these people are looking at the script, they didn't point out to the director and the writers, like, hey, isn't this racially insensitive? Nobody did it. And it's like, there's got to be a moment where it's like a writer should, or at least either a writer or an actor who's looking over the script should be able to say, like, hey, this looks kind of effed up, or this reads like it's going to be kind of effed up. Should we try to do something different? But yeah, I just had to address how, like, stupid it is. And I think many people have brought up how stupid it is and racially insensitive it is. But when Moore and the others come back and they realize the damage it was going on, they realized they needed to train and be prepared. So they go to Xavier's mansion where there's enough room so he can actually, and this part is really well done, where you actually see Xavier show like why he is such a great teacher, because he not only like is there for them like for emotional support, but you know, like almost like a therapist, and as a trainer. And it's like, you know, teaching like, you know, Hank how to embrace his powers, and it's like, you know, liberate yourself, you know, like, and like you see him like running so fast to outpace fairly quickly Xavier in a race. You know, teasing Havoc, who's pretty much like the jock of the group, keep teasing Hank constantly. But he's still he teasing out of, you know, care. He still cares for Hank. He's a teammate. He just likes to poke fun. But he teases Havoc to like, don't let your powers own you, and teach him how to like, you know, harness it and focus it so it won't go wild. And I think they kind of changed actors in the next film, Days of Future Past, because they're not. I don't think this is the same actor who played Havoc, because Lucas Till plays Havoc here. Is he the same guy? Yeah, same guy, just slightly older. I figured it was like a different person. But anyway, he yeah, he teaches Banshee about using his power so he can like, you know, carry himself off, and so he can be able to not necessarily fly but glide, you know, through the air, and just let the his sonic scream carry him uplift. And then it's cool to see like the comic accurate, glide wings that you see in the comics. But then the way he teaches Magneto, you know, be able to like, because he uses powers in anger to help him, you know, make it work for him. But he gets inside his head to bring up, you know, buried good memories, and utilize like a balance between rage and serenity in order to fully utilize his powers to his fullest capabilities, being able to move larger metal objects. And it's just like you see the joy that, you know, coming from the actor, that kind of enhances the character, where it's like, you know, I never thought I had that, because you see like, you know, a little, you know, glimpse of him and his mother celebrating Hanukkah, and it's like he throughout that whole horrific ordeal throughout the Holocaust, he forgot all that stuff, because it's like all that was just kind of like beaten, almost feel like it was beaten out of him. But you know, thanks to Xavier, he brings that from the pits back to the surface, and it's not. Thank you for that memory, because you know, because he is like with Bruce Wayne. It's like he's just a boy who, or even with Killmonger, he's just still little children who misses their parents that was taken from them unceremoniously at a very young age, and more often very violently, and they just could not, and they were too young to try to process that properly. So you know, once everything's like, you know, put in a different, like, you know, like all the pawns are in their right positions, so they know where on the ocean where the boats are going to be, and if one boat being, you know, a Russian one that's piloted by Azazel, trying to push it over into U.S. waters to like, oh, that's automatic declaration of war. So as soon as that happens, they gotta automatically fire, and one fires, the other gotta fire automatically. And so the X-Men go there utilizing the first Blackbird, and they pull Shaw's submarine from the ocean floor because he has like a secret room where Xavier cannot get inside using his powers. Has these radioactive fuel rods, so that way he can just absorb the energy from, so that way he can release it in a big explosion to start off like a nuclear devastation, where only mutants should be able to survive. Should be an opposite word. But Xavier is trying to convince the whole time, like during the training, like Magneto need to like let go of his pain and bring in Shaw alive to face true justice. But that's the only thing that they differ on, is the fact that Xavier wants to unite everybody, while Magneto sees like there's no unity because they will always see us as other or less than or freaks or whatever, and we should only find content with our own. And like people like Shaw only deserve death. So Magneto goes in. He quickly takes out Riptide, very fast. And of course, while the others fighting off former colleague Angel and Azazel, and there's a moment where like Azazel get distracted by Mystique disguising herself as Shaw, but with the helmet on, which she should not know about. This is odd. And that was like a bad judgment, or at least you can clearly see that they probably neglected that kind of glaring observation. But I guess it's tiny enough where it's like until somebody points it out, you don't really think about it. It distracts him long enough for Beast to knock out Azazel, and you see like the soldiers on the U.S. boat and soldiers on the Russian boat, who both are not too keen on firing off nuclear warheads, but they have to do what they have to do, because there's a line that said twice through here that Magneto hears, where it's like, oh, they're just following orders. And it's something that you hear that from like military officials or police officials, where it's like they're just men following orders. It's like that's no excuse. As for a long time, there's never been a good excuse to do horrific things under the whole guise of just following orders. There's things where there's just morally wrong. So Magneto manages to get inside, and of course, with Shaw's powers, Magneto isn't fully equipped to take him down. So he come up with because there's a crack that was made when Azazel starts tossing Eric around. There's a crack in the wall, so Magneto gets Shaw to toss him around a lot more, so that way things start shattering. Xavier can get there and do his thing, and he tricks Shaw, distracts him, so he can take like a metal wire to take off his helmet, so Xavier can freeze him in place. Then people often wonder like, oh, how is he able to kill him with his powers? It's like, well, it's force, essentially. Anything that's hit at Shaw at a significant amount, he will absorb and repel. But uh, uh, Eric is smart. It's like, okay, he takes the very thing that was a symbol of, you know, the death of his mother that Shaw gave him. He utilized it, and he just slowly, you know, pushes it in Shaw's brain and out the back. And it's a cool transition, a cool shot, because Xavier's feeling this because he's inside Shaw's mind. He does not want to risk releasing him because he would end up killing, you know, Eric immediately. So it just, you know, kind of cements like the friction between these two now. And so now that, you know, Shaw is dead, he takes the helmet and he goes to the other mutants on the beach and lets them know, like, Shaw is dead. The one thing we did agree on is the fact that our enemy is humans. You know, they will never accept us. And he says, like, they're about to fire, you know, these, you know, missiles. I can feel the metal like all coming together and pointing towards us. And Xavier confirms, like, yeah, they're planning on firing on us. Even though Xavier could probably, well, maybe not everyone, well, probably could everyone, given the fact that in X2 you can see him pausing a whole museum full of people, or a zoo, or, you know, or whatever type of place, a zoo or museum, whatever, full of people, freezes them in place. So he can very well kind of manipulate. Well, then again, at that time Xavier was a lot older and experienced. This is young Xavier, so he probably could not reach those big two boats full of American and Russians people. And so it's like, but anyway, I don't know. You could at least control the two generals and say, like, hey, or like control one general to, like, I mean, not one general, but one soldier to, no, like one soldier on the Russian side aborted. Oh no, he set off one rocket to knock out the boat that was about to cross the U.S. border to kick off the crisis. Effectively stopping World War III. But now that they see that mutants, people with abilities, they're like, okay, we need to put a stop to that. And then they fire off. Magneto stop it, turns it around, and, you know, Moira tried to, like, stop everybody, but she can't call in to her higher ups to abort everything because the radio is damaged. She tried to shoot Magneto, but clearly after the third bullet, you'll think you'll stop because it's not going to work. You know his powers is controlling metal. Guns are useless. Or at least try to tackle him to the freaking ground or something, or take off the helmet or something like that. It'd be smarter. But one straight bullet hits Xavier's spine, you know, paralyzing him. This, you know, breaks Magneto's concentration while he's tending to his friend and about to choke the life out of Moira with her own dog tags. But Xavier pleads for him to stop. So he leaves with Azazel, Angel, Riptide, and Mystique. You know, Mystique, you know, wants to, like, you know, she feels like she has to stay near the guy that she grew up with, but Xavier realized what she really what she really thinks, and he tells her, like, no, I know you want to go with him. It's okay. Just be safe, whatever. And she, you know, she used this term in a mocking kind of way, but now she's kind of fully embraced it and tells Beast, mutant and proud, like, remember, Beast, mutant and proud. And I don't know, you know, it feels hacky the way it was delivered. And I know it's supposed to, you know, uh kind of signifies something like, you know, like a tally ho kind of attitude, but it's like, God, it was kind of weak to me. And Jennifer Lawrence is a great actress, but she did not sell that. And I don't think it was written very well in the first place. I doubt anybody can make that sound good. So they all go away. Uh, you know, Xavier now in a chair, you know, trying to establish as his place is like a base of operations for the X-Men. And even though him and Mora has like a thing together, and she knows, you know, he knows that she will never like purposely tell anybody, but knowing how the government is, will probably, you know, do something to force her to tell. So it'd be just safer if he just made her forget the entire situation. And you get this kind of very like, I don't like to use this word frivolously, but when you know, when it's utilized in like a true definition, I'll call it like I see it, very misogynistic kind of thing, where I don't know why they put that in the script, but well, you know why, because it's the 60s, so of course it's gonna, like, you know, don't be people like this misogynistic, but I don't think it's needed in the writing. You can just, you know, you can understand already, you know, back in the day they would not, you know, consider a woman's opinion on certain topics, just, you know, whatever. But you don't need it to like kind of hammer that home by adding in the line of dialogue. This is why we don't let women in the government. Blah, blah, blah. You didn't really need to add that. You can just assume that's the kind of mindset with most guys back in the day, especially in the 60s. At least most guys, not every guy, but most guys will have that kind of mindset back in the 60s. Because, and it's just like that doofy look that the actress had, you know, in her face, like, I remember this and some of that, and a kiss. Like, what's that dopey look? And it's like, God, it's like, I don't know, what was the direction on that? I don't know. It's like, I found that kind of dumb. But anyway, you know, Magneto fully embracing his red and his red garb, even though I kind of like, I dig the helmet and he colored it up to be red and everything like that, but the clothes, and of course still at that time wasn't fully embracing comic book accurate costumes, but trying to like match it up with what Ian McKellen would normally wear in like the original X-Men films. But you know, hopefully in the MCU, they, you know, because Deadpool is definitely doing it well, embracing comic accurate costumes. I want to see like accurate Magneto costume. It'd be cool to get Michael Fassbender back too. But anyway, that was X-Men First Class. Very fun movie. But I cannot wait till next Thursday. I can just fully talk about one of the greatest, probably like the greatest X-Men movie of all time, Days of Future Past. Gotta love that film. That was, oh my God, it was really good. But we'll get to that. But if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of X-Men First Class. Have you watched it recently? What fond memories you have of it? You know, what didn't work for you in this film? Because back when this came out, everybody and their mama loved X-Men First Class. I enjoyed it, but it definitely was not, you know, like the, you know, I could not tout it as like the best X-Men film of all time. It's just the same way. I feel the same way about it like I do with the Guardians of the Galaxy films. You know, they're good movies, but I just cannot put it as the top, you know, Marvel film I've ever seen. I can't personally say that. But anyway, I will see you guys possibly in an hour. I can play, well, I'm probably gonna wait till tomorrow for more FF16. I want to play some Guilty Gear Strive that I downloaded this morning. I downloaded season 1 character pack. I didn't download character pack 2, season 2 character pack. I'm probably gonna wait like a week or two before I download that, so I can get the full roster. But I want to really like get into Guilty Gear because that seemed kind of fun, and play a little bit of COD because I got a surprise for you guys. But anyway, I will see you guys hopefully later. But let me know what you guys think. So take care. Have a great weekend.